All right, thanks, Rich. Well, you know, school starts in just a few weeks. Lots to do for parents, but one of the most important things is making sure your kids have the right vaccinations. And today, Dr. Michael Sevilla joins us to talk about what your kids need before they walk through those doors on the first day of class. And some of this is changing a little bit because it used to be vaccinations were over by the time a kid hit kindergarten.
Yes.
And that is not the case anymore. Why the changes?
Well, I think one of the things that we're seeing, especially as kids go into 7th grade now, that they're needing a tetanus booster, what's called a whooping cough or a diphtheria booster, because they're seeing in scattered places across the country a resurgence of some of these diseases like whooping cough, and I think that's part of what's driving this.
Okay. We talked earlier, I know you talked with Jeff, talking about the athletes and so on and what's required for them. A lot of them, like by this point, the football players, the cheerleaders, they've had to do their physicals before they go into school. But there are other sports that are coming up, cross country and so on. How does that all come into play? What do you have to be looking for the athletes? I believe we have some graphics to show. Overtraining injuries, what are you talking about there?
Well, a lot of people, when we talk about obesity and kids not being very active, but on the other side of the spectrum, there's a lot of kids who are over-exercising and causing injuries that way, like stress fractures and things. So that can be just as dangerous as obesity. So that's something that's very important that should be talked about during an exam.
Right. So if you're in the physical, what does a parent ask about that, about overtraining injuries? I mean, do they ask for different stretching exercises, or what kinds of things does the doctor tell them to watch for?
Well, the main thing, especially this time of year, is hydration. Very important. Stretching exercises, how to deal with injuries so they're not a season-long type of injury. So those are things that are basically talked about during the examination.
Okay, we're talking sports-specific issues. That's the next thing that comes up. I guess the doctor's annual exam of the young athlete should be similar to one of other children. Most pediatricians will address some sports-specific injuries, including nutrition and so on. Yeah,
especially in the summertime. Usually kids are a little bit lax on their nutrition, especially as they get back to school and doing sports. Fruits and vegetables, those are very important. Especially sports-specific things, whether it's football or cheerleading or track. Sometimes there can be injuries specific to those, especially with different joints of the body and that sort of thing.
Okay. Now we're also thinking too, or geared everything physical, but there's also an emotional and a mental side to all this. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I think the transitioning to getting back to school is a very important thing. Maybe even some things as basic as, you know, getting back on your school sleep pattern. You know, that's kind of lax during the summertime. Getting back to proper diet and exercise. There's a lot of junk food in the summertime, and getting back to, you know, just getting ready for school and fruits and vegetables, and especially if you're playing sports.
In that way. A lot of schools have policies. No medication can come in with the students and so on. If you have a child who has some issues, do you need to talk to your doctor first? Like, say they suffer from migraines or things like that, where they need to have access to some of these things. How do you deal with that with your doctor? Can you get something like that figured out ahead of time?
Especially if kids, especially playing sports, if they have asthma or one of those type of illnesses, that they carry their medicine with them. Usually most schools have the parent bring in a paper saying, having their doctor sign off on it and say, oh, you take this medicine when they have problems breathing or when they get a headache. So that's another reason to have a good exam, just to make sure that if there are medicines needed at school, that they are there for the child.
Right, they get all those forms. If a parent needs to, they can call the office and get things faxed over and so on, so that things are right on file. It makes it easy for the transition. Well, we thank you for being here this morning. Very easy transition as always to see you. And we want to remind everybody that those vaccinations are important. It's not just the kindergarten kids, it's the older kids now too.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks, Dr. Sevilla.